Mr Hume, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to have secured this afternoon's members' business slot. I'm delighted for two reasons. Firstly, it's always a privilege to be able to lead your own debate in this chamber. And secondly, I've been minded for some time that when such an opportunity next arises, I would utilise it to celebrate the outstanding contribution the Citizen Advice Service has made to British society, and more specifically, highlight an innovative and successful project being run in my own region. As parliamentarians, I think it would be fair to say that we have all had a healthy regard for the work CABs do around Scotland, and I have often referred some of my constituents to them due to the excellent expert advice they can provide free of charge on issues ranging from legal matters to immigration advice. The Citizens Advice Bureau has become woven into the fabric of British life, and the network of over 3,500 advice offering locations across the UK, with 250 of those in Scotland. They're pillars of the local communities that they do serve. Like many institutions which have gone on to have a profound impact in the UK, the Citizens Advice Bureau was born actually out of wartime necessity. It was just the day after war was declared with Germany that the first 200 bureaux were opened and were run from private houses, public buildings, and even a horse box in one instance. As is the case today, the service was dependent on the goodwill and assistance of volunteers. The casework of advisers back then was certainly different to today's caseload, but of course no less important. It then ranged from issues regarding ration books, evacuation, locating missing relatives, and of course prisoners of war. It was during that war that the Citizens Advice Bureau first gained its reputation for providing valuable support in advising people of their benefit entitlement by helping families complete applications for all the wartime allowances that were available to them. Crucially, the Bureau's experience in witnessing the distress caused by a delay in these applications being processed led to them raising the issues with the relevant government boards of the day. And they managed not only to speed up the process, but convince the boards to open up more offices to process applications. And thus began the Bureau's long and successful tradition of advocacy and lobbying of the government of whatever colour and agencies to influence and change policy to the benefit of those they serve. The Citizens Advice Bureau has shown an ability to evolve throughout its 74-year history, and nowhere is this better demonstrated than with a project in my region, which is providing valuable advice on a range of issues to an often underrepresented section of society, young people. In May, I had the pleasure of visiting Duns to see firsthand the outstanding work being done by the Roxburgh and Berwickshire Citizens Advice Bureau. In 2009, the Young Citizens Project was created, thanks to funding from Scottish Borders Council Fairer Scotland. The project began in Berwickshire, and its objectives were to provide regular, confidential advice sessions for people aged 16 to 25, attract, recruit and train young people to become volunteer advisors, and liaise with local community groups. I'm pleased to say that in the past 4 years, the project has gone from strength to strength. Its success has not only seen it expand into Roxburgh, but it has also undergone dramatic changes. Following consultation with a group of young people, the project has been rebranded as Youth at CAB and delivers a service that is youth-led with a steering group of young people from throughout Roxburgh and Berwickshire CAB. And they direct, of course, the aims and objectives of the project. They now employ Sophie Charlotte-Wild, who I believe is up in the audience, one of their former youth volunteers, as a young person's advisor, who, along with Annette McGrath, the project leader, work closely with local schools and colleges to raise awareness of what the Citizens Advice Bureau deliver. These workshops that they deliver have taken place at 6 local high schools in the area, and to date, over 3,800 pupils have received advice, with 95% of the pupils saying they enjoyed those workshops. Of course, this work is only possible by the continued funding provided by Scottish Borders Council Fairer Scotland and generous grants from the Bank of Scotland Foundation. But more importantly, it's the tireless efforts of the CAB staff and the 31 young volunteers who continue to drive this project forward. I can't mention them all, of course, but volunteers such as Aaron Bolton and Aaron Miller, who run the bi-monthly newsflash, distributed to high schools and colleges, and we have helped to secure nearly £700 in funding from a project called Youth Checks. Volunteers such as Oscar McAndrew, Kyle Wilson and Jess McLean, who alongside Aaron Bolton comprise the project steering group and helped to secure £4,500 in funding to produce a CAB awareness raising video. The success of the Youth Info at CAB project has understandably come to attention of others. I understand that the Dalkeith CAB sought guidance from the project following a successful application to the Big Lottery Fund to develop a similar service in their area. And I do understand that the two other CABs in the Borders, that's Central Borders and Peoples and District, are now interested in entering into discussions to roll out the project borders-wide, which would be a fantastic testament to the hard work of all those associated with Roxburgh and Berwickshire CAB. I was delighted to welcome the Roxburgh and Berwick CAB to the Parliament for a visit back in July, and I must say I'm pleased to once again be able to welcome them to this Parliament this afternoon. And of course wish them well in continuation of their good work and encourage other areas to look at rolling out similar essential youth projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Christine Grahame to be followed by Jackie Bailey, and speeches of 4 minutes, please.
Oh, right. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I also welcome the debate and congratulate Jim Hume in securing this, and also, by coincidence, welcome members of the Youth Parliament from Scottish Borders who happen to be in Parliament here today, and I think they're also listening to this debate. I also declare that I was once a volunteer lawyer giving advice at a CAB. You see, lawyers do give advice free sometimes. Hold the front page. But I think that the public and indeed politicians are not totally fully aware of the need of our young people to have free advice across a whole spectrum of areas. And the inhibitions that we perhaps all share about asking for advice, let alone knowing that we need it or where to find it, this can be worse for the young. Outreach, as developed by Roxburgh and Berwickshire, the neighbouring constituency to me, is to be very much welcomed, and it's an excellent development. I'm delighted to hear from Jim Hume that it might be extended to other parts of the Borders. I went onto the CAB website, scanned it specifically to see what issues there were on there, and there's a myriad of them, and they're so complex. If you look on the page simply for young people and consumer rights, I'm going to quote something. We're all going to learn something. It's about betting and gambling. It says, if you are under 18, you may not enter a public betting shop or gaming club. You can go into a licensed bingo club or other premises where bingo is played, as long as you don't take part. If you are under 18, you can take part in prize bingo at fairs and amusement arcades, as long as the prize does not exceed £15. Now, how do you know that? I mean, who's to know that? It's so complicated. So much to do with what is age prohibited and age allowed is very complex. Take a more serious issue. Perhaps gambling is serious, but let's take firearms and other weapons. Again, the guidance on the site. If you are under 17, you cannot purchase or hire any firearm. If you are under the age of 15, you cannot have in your possession an assembled shotgun unless supervised by someone of 21 or over, or unless the gun is covered with a security fastened gun cover, I hope you're still awake, that prevents it from being fired. You cannot have it in your possession. Now, it's very, very complicated. And I think that the access to these, and I actually don't use Twitter, but I do use Facebook and other social media, that the fact that the young can access this as well as the outreach and through social media is very, very important. And if I go on to something that is perhaps unfortunately more prevalent for young people today, and that's access to benefits and housing. Who knew they'd be looking to our 16 to 25-year-olds to have to know this stuff? Because I have to say, when I left school just a couple of decades ago, I walked straight into a job. I walked along Chambers Street. I knocked on the door, 16 and a half, had had enough of school. Knocked on 4 insurance companies and got offered a job at every one. Gone are those days. So unfortunately, we're having to have our young people come straight from school or even straight from university and college, having to know how to access benefits. So you have entitlement, wonderful thing, young people and benefits on the CAB site, and it explains that young people under the age of 25 are entitled to 20% lower job seekers allowance. They have lower benefits all round, which of course I think, and I'm sure many in here will think, is a scandal. So it's not an issue for older people, it's not an issue for people who are suddenly find themselves unemployed. Regrettably, although some of it to do with firearms and so on is complex but necessary, regrettably, the issues about young people, benefits, access to housing, their rights are very serious issues. And my colleague Alison McInnes, who's sitting here, knows that on the Justice Committee, we find the complexity of what you can and can't do at different ages a mystery. It's time it was resolved. Just finishing to say, citizens' advice, being young, being heard, excellent document, and I thank you for having the debate.
Thank you very much. And I now call Jackie Baillie to be followed by Mary Scanlon.
And I thank you, Presiding Officer, and join with others in congratulating Jim Hume on securing time for this debate in Parliament and also for his very thoughtful speech. I mean, I think it is appropriate to recognise the work of the Citizens' Advice Bureaus and indeed Citizens' Advice Scotland, because they do deliver frontline, essential advice for very, very many people in our communities across Scotland, both young and old alike. And I do think that with the serious cost of living crisis that people are facing, the numbers appearing at their doors is increasing exponentially. Apparently, there have been 500,000 new inquiries just in the past year for over 200,000 clients, and undoubtedly that figure will go up. Jim Hume rightly praises the work of Roxburgh and Berwickshire CAB, and we've received a briefing also about Motherwell's CAB's Reach Out project for young people, and other members have spoken in positive terms about their local service. So I'm going to join in with that, because I want to speak in equally positive terms about West Dumbartonshire CAB. Not content with just providing advice on a range of issues from out-of-work benefits to disability allowances, child tax credits to pensions, which, frankly, they all do exceptionally well. They go further, and I think that's an illustration of the creativity of CABs in responding to local needs, as they have done in Roxburgh and Berwickshire. Because they do look beyond the immediate problem. They do focus on practical solutions, and the hallmark of what they do is they work in partnership with others in our local area to help some of the most vulnerable people. Let me give you a couple of examples of what we're doing in West Dumbartonshire. And firstly, let me start with food banks, because West Dumbartonshire CAB is at the forefront of organising and supporting volunteers for the food bank in our area. Staffed by volunteers, many of them young people as well, working with the churches, the CAB has helped to organise food collections, has helped to organise bag packing to raise money, to expand what they can do, and also has worked with the churches on the distribution of parcels to those most in need. And what they've done is because they've recognised that there is a growing need in their area for this type of service. Because we know the numbers using food banks have increased enormously. I think the Trussell Trust produced figures to indicate that there were 4,500, say, a year ago. That's increased to almost 15,000 families across Scotland, and they only provide a proportion of the food banks. We know there are local arrangements across Scotland that are different. And of that number, something like a third were children, something like a fifth were employed. So it is increasingly clear that we're facing a cost of living crisis, something that the CAB are taking action on, and something that affects our young people as well. And then there is their activity on payday lending. We have 4 payday lenders on our high streets. They're charging huge interest rates, in one case in excess of 3,000%. I actually sent my staff to check the figure again because I thought there was a typing error in there. But it is 3,000%, sucking people into a spiral of debt from which there is very little real chance of escape. And we're discovering that some young people in work are actually having to go to payday lenders, because what they're telling us is that the salary that they may get, whether it's weekly or monthly, isn't lasting to the same extent that it was previously. It's just not going far enough because their incomes have declined in real terms, and costs of basics have risen by something like 25% in the last 5 years. So providing practical advice is important, but actually providing practical support for people in your communities that are struggling. And I do think that that's where the Reach Out project from Motherwell, or indeed the Youth Info at CAB project in Roxburgh and Berwickshire, come into their own, because they recognise the need for advice and support for 16 to 25-year-olds, whether it's money, housing, jobs. Preventative advice and information is so critically important at a time when unemployment is rising and negotiating what is a changing workplace, never mind changing community, is difficult enough. Presiding Officer, I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to CABs and their volunteers, young and old alike, and thank them for their efforts on our behalf.
Thank you very much. I now call Mary Scanlon to be followed by Alison Johnstone.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would also like to thank Jim Hume for bringing this issue for debate in the Chamber. John Lamont is not available today, but he has passed on quite a bit of local information on this project. Like Christine Grahame, in my past life, I was a volunteer for Citizens Advice Bureau, one afternoon and one evening for quite a long time in Cooper and St Andrews. So I'm also very well aware of the excellent work that they continue to do. And like Jackie Bailey, who was given information about West Dumbartonshire, I was also given some information about Citizens Advice Orkney. And although they don't have an identical project, they very kindly gave some information which I think is worth mentioning, which is to address people who are financially incapable of managing their day-to-day finances, planning ahead, knowing where to seek financial advice, have limited basic budgeting skills, find it difficult to make ends meet, and as Jackie Bailey said, before going to payday lenders, etc., try to tackle it early by giving advice not to get into sustainable debt. But in particular, I was pleased to hear that the project in Roxburgh and Berwickshire CAB was used to highlight the benefits of volunteering. The registration with the Saltire Awards in recognition of volunteering achievements for young people aged 11 to 24 is a mark of someone's commitment to their own community. And I think, as Christine Grahame was mentioning employment, I do think that that's something that employers would be interested in, and I think it is impressive. But given that there are 77,000 young people in Scotland who are not in education, employment or training, this project is a great help with its support and advice as well as awareness raising. The outreach surgery locations and publicity material is very helpful, and it would certainly lend itself to roll out in areas such as the Highlands and Islands. But as Jim Hume said, I also commend the close working with the 6 local secondary schools, as well as delivering the monthly outreach surgeries in Borders College. This is an opportunity to raise issues relating to cyberbullying and many other topical issues which are now coming onto our agenda. I was concerned to read that the new focus for the Roxburgh and Berwickshire project will be on planning the project's exit strategy if funding is not secured. So although we're very good at identifying and praising good practice and achievements, we're not always so good at adopting good practice and seeing it rolled out across the board. But I hope that Roxburgh and Berwickshire Citizens Advice Bureau will identify the need for their service, and if it is an exit strategy, I hope they will be able to ensure that the needs of the many young people who benefit from this project will be met. So there is still much to be done to help young people into training, further education and work, as well as how to manage their money, benefits and housing where appropriate. And I fully commend this project, as well as the wider work of the Citizens Advice Bureau. And I think, to be truthful, there's probably a similar type of project up and down the Citizens Advice Bureaus throughout Scotland. And again, as I said, in my past life, I was a volunteer. I have nothing but praise for the training that Citizens Advice give volunteers, and also the first-class work they do, but also that they are topical and they respond to topical trends. So finally, Presiding Officer, I commend Jim Hume on raising this excellent initiative in the Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call Alison Johnstone to be followed by Malcolm Chisholm.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too would like to thank Jim Hume for securing this debate this afternoon. As Jim Hume suggested, Citizens' Advice is a national institution. Its work on the ground with people across our communities in Scotland has made it invaluable, and it's the first port of call to many in a crisis. It's fair to say that its services, delivered by staff and well-trained volunteers, have rarely been more in demand. The challenges posed by navigating the ever-changing benefits system, stagnating wages, rising prices, mean that many more people need help from their local CAB. But among its many important aims, Scottish Citizens' Advice seeks to help the whole community to bring money into the local economy and to increase knowledge and skills. And while Scottish Citizens' Advice helps many people who find themselves in a crisis, it also works very proactively to equip young and old alike to better help themselves. And the innovative youth outreach projects that we are here to debate today do just that. I'd like to mention some of the great initiatives taking place in Lothian, thanks to Citizens' Advice. In partnership with East Lothian Council Housing Service, over 900 young people, currently in S4 and S5 in high school, will take part in a course called Money Matters, where they'll discuss and learn about the financial implications of living independently and being responsible for managing their own budgets. And when it comes to budgeting, the Musselburgh and District Citizens' Advice application team, a group of young people, have come up with an app that helps people to manage their money and to keep on top of their personal finances. And this incredibly useful device took them to the runners-up slot in the Money for Life challenge. It helps people prioritise spending, keep an eye on how much cash they have available, and lets them better understand their own spending habits. It's been so well received that the team has been given a legacy grant from Citizens' Advice Scotland and Lloyds Bank to develop the app further. And I'm pleased to learn too that young enterprise sessions will be delivered to disadvantaged young people in East Lothian. Recently, for example, Citizens' Advice had worked with young parenting groups and on substance misuse issues. But I really like the fact that this project is empowering. It gives each group of people, young people, £150 to develop an idea, whether that's a product, a service or an event, with the aim of making a profit. 35 learners completed last year's course, and every single group was successful in making a profit. And this project develops the skills essential to enterprise and helps young people learn more about starting their own business. Young people know best what appeals to other young people, and they're given a chance to explore and develop exciting business proposals. Presiding Officer, at a time when household incomes have never been more stretched, it's essential that we take steps to equip our young people with the skills to use their money wisely. Citizens' Advice want all those who use their service to feel that they have some control. They strive to promote the experience and satisfaction of taking steps to help yourself. And these initiatives dovetail with the aims of the Curriculum for Excellence. Financially savvy, active and responsible citizens are better placed to navigate the many challenges of student life, home life, working life, and to play an important role in their own families and societies in these challenging times. We have all, I am sure, referred constituents to Citizens' Advice Bureau, called them ourselves to benefit from their expertise and experience, and been enlightened by them when called upon to give evidence to our parliamentary committees. Their positive policy and social development work is a valuable contribution to the many issues of the day. Investing in their invaluable services is money very well spent. Presiding Officer, I too congratulate Citizens' Advice on all its work and on these innovative youth outreach projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before I call the Minister, I now call Malcolm Chisholm.
I'd like to congratulate Jim Hume on bringing this important subject to the Chamber today, and also to pay tribute to the Citizens' Advice Scotland and all the Citizens' Advice bureaus across Scotland who provide such an important service to thousands of people in the country. Now, the motion today obviously is about a particular age group in a particular place in Scotland, but I think it's true to say that the pressures facing people under the age of 25 throughout Scotland today are just as severe, if not more severe, than those faced by the wider population. It's therefore vitally important to ensure that there are adequate services to meet their specific needs. Now, of course, one important aspect of the Citizens Advice Scotland is the research that they do on a whole range of trends, and one part of their recent research has told us that young people are finding it increasingly difficult to access the housing ladder and are coming into conflict with landlords and debt collectors more and more frequently. As we know, changes to benefits for this particular group are also set to continue, and so the importance of advisory groups like Citizens Advice Scotland and the Citizens Advice Bureaus across Scotland is becoming ever more apparent. The project highlighted in the motion today actually illustrates a new way of mainstreaming the work of Citizens Advice using a medium that is familiar to younger people. What young people need as a bare minimum at this time is reliable and accessible information. And today we can celebrate that independent services are responding to this need and live in the hope that others will follow the example of best practice that we're discussing today. Youth Info at C8B, I'm told, ran for an 8-week trial period in the Jedburgh Health Centre on Tuesday afternoons with financial support from Fairer Scotland and the Bank of Scotland Foundation. What was important in the setting up and running of the service was that young people informed the development and now take part in the delivery of a drop-in centre solely for the use of young people. And what interested me was the fact that it's not just about disseminating information in a reactive way, but also in a preventative manner, because the CAB is there with drop-ins and information on their websites, but also engages with individuals of school age to ensure that when they move on to life as adults, they are fully aware of the support available. So I think it is an exemplar that other areas of Scotland could look at carefully and benefit from copying. In their report, Being Young, Being Heard, the impact of the recession on young people in Scotland, Citizens Advice highlight the magnitude of the challenge facing the provision of services in future. As the report points out, young people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than the average worker, and in Scotland alone the number of 18 to 24-year-olds claiming job seekers allowance increased by 79% after 2007. And as we know, many are going to be required to engage in voluntary work in return for the support, and all will be required to attend the job centre and prove they have been looking for work on a daily basis. Much of this now depends on access to digital services. All of this puts young people at high risk of losing support if they are not kept informed about their rights and what will be expected of them in the new benefit system. So with welfare reform, the need for services like this will grow ever greater and more urgent. Parental support and an adult life that starts with state support as a sole source of income will be the lived reality for so many of the younger generation. And furthermore, greater numbers resorting to short-term lending is a very real possibility as the effects of austerity are felt, and it is absolutely vital that the consequences of engaging with payday lenders are made clear to young people. The CAB's own research also shows that young people are unhappy claiming benefits and long to find employment, but many are at present underclaiming the benefits to which they are entitled. All this means is that the new project will give these youngsters the tools to navigate the benefit system with greater confidence and knowledge. So I would like to end by joining Jim Hume in congratulating the Citizens Advice for their project, their innovative project in the Borders, and also thanking the Citizens Advice Bureaus across Scotland for all the great work that they do.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite the Minister to respond to the debate, and I call on Aileen Campbell, 7 minutes.
Officer, and like every other member today, I'd like to congratulate Jim Hume on securing this debate, and we've heard some well-deserved praise for this project to support young people by the Roxburgh and Berwickshire Citizens Advice Bureau here today in the Chamber. And I'd also like to add my voice to that chorus of appreciation, and also the voices of some of the MSYPs I met earlier from the Borders, Nicola Pringle, Finlay Duff and Scott Redmond, who all spoke really positively about the work being done by the CAB in the Borders and the really effective collaborative work that's happening in that area too. And again, just to reiterate the welcome that we've all given to the members from the CAB in the gallery today. Now, this government is right behind Scotland's young people, and fantastic initiatives like the one we're discussing today show what can be done in local communities to boost their chances as they begin adulthood and find their own way in the world. The Scottish Government is clear that the future of our nation rests in the hands of our young people, and that's why we are doing everything in our power to give them the chance to flourish and to go on to have positive, successful futures. And we make no apologies for having high aspirations for young Scots. We want them to aim high, and we know that with the right opportunities and with the right openings, there is no limit to what they can go on to achieve. Projects such as the one in the Scottish borders highlighted by Jim Hume make a valuable contribution to that drive by showing young people that they are not alone, giving them help and support and involving them in community projects such as this. We can make a real and meaningful difference to their lives. And this is another example of the sterling work carried out by Citizens Advice Bureau in communities right across Scotland. Many of the wonderful local initiatives that we've heard about from members today. And I'll want to plug my own constituency and the valuable advice that the Clydesdale Citizens Advice Bureau gives, which I've seen first hand. Now, such advice centres help families and people in need, often some of the most vulnerable in our society, to address complex and difficult issues every day. Whether it's debt, housing problems or benefits issues, the support given often prevents situations from spiralling into crises. And that's part and parcel of its work done over the decades, as Jim Hume outlined. And he mentioned that that work has now evolved from the ration book advice that he mentioned to now embracing social media and all the other modern technologies that can get through and get the right messages to people who are in need. And as Alison Johnstone, Jackie Bailey and Christine Grahame correctly noted, we know that more and more people are going to Bureau for help all the time. And it would be remiss of me not to point out that much of that is down to the harsh UK Government's welfare reform measures, such as the widely condemned bedroom tax. Now, the Scottish Government has made its opposition to these measures, which have been imposed on hard-pressed families right across Scotland by the UK Government, abundantly clear. And such drastic welfare cuts can only exacerbate issues like child poverty and disadvantage, which afflict the lives of too many young Scots, as Malcolm Chisholm, I think, pointed out earlier. And we're doing what we can to mitigate the impact. And it's for that reason we have committed £7.9 million of additional funding for advice and support services to help address the effects of welfare reform. And that includes £2.5 million channelled directly to Citizens Advice Scotland to fund a range of services helping people on the ground, while bureaus across the country are also receiving additional allocations from the wider funding pot. By strengthening these vital services in this way, we can allow them to expand and undertake new and innovative projects. And this youth initiative in Roxburgh and Berwickshire shows us that there's no shortage of ideas. The age group which the venture focus on, 16 to 25-year-olds, face a period of huge transition in their lives, which can often lead to feelings of isolation and uncertainty. I think Christine Grahame mentioned that as a theme in her speech. And understand that this project gives advice on a range of issues such as study, work, health, money management and housing, areas which many young people will require a helping hand to steer them in the right direction. The project has 2 members of staff, successfully recruited 31 young volunteers, and today, as Jim Hume said, 3,806 students have taken part in their workshops. And that's a phenomenal result, and again shows the excellent impact that volunteers can have in our communities. The fruitful links which the project has built up with high schools in Roxburgh and Berwickshire, as well as the Borders College, are very much in keeping with the kind of local collaboration that this government is promoting between our educational establishments and organisations in the wider community. And again, it was great to hear from the young MSYPs this morning about that collaborative approach bearing fruit in their area. Now, under Curriculum for Excellence, which is transforming learning for Scotland's children and young people in order to improve their life chances, community learning and development has a key role to play as well. And I've seen some fantastic examples of that right across the borders. Scotland's National Youth Information and Citizenship Organisation, Young Scot, is also undertaking excellent work to support young people through key transitions in their lives. Young Scot's vision is for young people to take responsibility for changing our world and tackling social issues so that they can grow up in a Scotland that promotes aspiration, enterprise, opportunity, inclusion and well-being. Presiding Officer, I think all of us here today will share that inspiring vision with Young Scot, and the Scottish Government has committed over £1 million to the organisation this year to support its work. As well as helping young people to become informed and active citizens who are engaged with local communities, Young Scot delivers its hugely successful National Entitlement Card. And that card is now held by over 500,000 young people in Scotland and is the result of a hugely positive partnership between Young Scot, the Scottish Government, the Improvement Service, COSLA and all 32 local authorities. And just like Young Scot, the Citizens Advice project which brings us here today, the Scottish Government is committed to ensuring our young people are at the heart of everything we do. We want Scotland to be the best place for children and young people to grow up, and that's why we're breaking down the barriers which hold them back, such as poverty, disadvantage and lack of opportunity. Through our Getting It Right for Every Child approach, the key social policy frameworks, the Child Poverty Strategy for Scotland, Achieving Our Potential Equally Well and the Early Years Framework, we're driving a focus on early intervention and prevention to give our young people the best start in life. Curriculum for Excellence, as Alison Johnstone noted, is helping to ensure all young folk can be successful learners, confident individuals, effective contributors and responsible citizens. While of course their needs are at the very core of the Children and Young People Bill we've introduced to Parliament. Moreover, we invest over £2.5 billion a year in post-16 education, training and student support. We've retained the education maintenance allowance, which has been scrapped for students in England. We have invested over around £5 billion in colleges from 2007. Our Opportunities for All programme guarantees an offer of education or training opportunity for 16 to 19-year-olds across Scotland not already in work, education or training. Youth employment is now at its highest rate since the end of 2010. And for the second year running, the Scottish Government has surpassed its targets to provide 25,000 modern apprenticeships. So, Presiding Officer, that record shows our commitment to the young people in Scotland, and it's a commitment and ethos that is shared by many organisations across the country, striving to do crucial work to support young people like the Roxburgh and Berwickshire Citizens Advice Bureau that we're talking about today. But we recognise the challenges that exist, and partnership working, though, is key. So we must continue to work together to ensure that our focus never wanes, because Scotland's young people deserve no less from us. So thank you, Jim Hume, and thank you everyone for contributing today. Thank you.
Many thanks, and that concludes Jim Hume's members' debate on CAB-run innovative youth outreach projects. And I now suspend this meeting of Parliament until 2:30 p.m.